Good morning, students. Today we will discuss your class 8 supplementary reader in English. It so happened the last chapter, the Comet 2. We have already learnt the chapter, the Comet 1, which was written by Jayant Nirlakar. Before moving to Comet 2, we should know about the writer Jayant Nirlakar. He was an Indian astrophysicist, a proponent of steady-state cosmology. He developed with Sir Fred Hoyle the conformal gravity theory, commonly known as Hoyle-Nillikar theory. He was born on July 19, 1938 in Kolhapur. He has completed his education in Banaras Hindu University and University of Cambridge. He was awarded with Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan. In 1966, he joined Institute of Theoretical Astronomy in Cambridge University, and in 1972 he joined as Professor of Theoretical Physics at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai. In 1989, he took charge as founder director of Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics. Before we start Comet 2, we have to know the summary of Comet 1. Before starting the Comet 2, we should know and recollect the theory, the Comet 1. The story in two parts presents a contrast between the reaction of scientists and that of superstitious people towards a natural calamity. Scientists think of a problem in a rational manner and try to find out its solution. On the other hand, religious people resort to meaningless rituals and superstitions. When some calamity is averted by the efforts of scientists, religious people try to take credit by saying that it was their mantras and yajnas that did the miracle. Mr. Datta, who was popularly known as Dattada, was an amateur astronomer. He was lovingly called Dattada by his friends and relations. It was his ambition to discover a new comet. He had always longed for two things to fulfill this ambition of his. First one, a telescope, and second one is a spare time. He got both these things after his retirement. He now had enough money to buy a good telescope of his own. He named his telescope Divya Chakshu, or the Divine Eye. After his retirement, Dattada had also enough spare time to carry out his hobby of watching heavenly bodies through his telescope. Night after night, unmindful of the cold, he would spend many hours on the roof of his house in watching the stars. One December night, Dattada's ambition was fulfilled. He was able to discover a new comet. In a week's time, the observations of Dattada were verified by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Bangalore, and found correct. The new comet was named Comet Datta. A number of functions were held in honor of Manoj Datta. He was no doubt thankful to his friends and admirers for the honor they had given him, but he became sick of their loud praises. Being an introvert, he didn't like all this publicity. Dattada's wife, Indrani Devi, thought that Comet brought ill luck. She wished that a noble man like her husband should not have been associated with the discovery of a comet. Dattada tried to remove the unfounded fears of his wife. He said that there was no relation between the arrival of a comet and the calamities on the earth. He told her that the comet discovered by him would pass harmlessly and cause no harm to anyone. Dr. James of the King's College, Cambridge, observed that Comet Datta was fast heading towards the earth. Unless some rare circumstances happened, the comet was going to collide against the earth. According to his calculations, this cometary collision was expected in about 10 months' time. If it took place, it would wipe all life from the earth. Dr. James had written an article on his findings and calculations. He spent this for publication in Nature, the famous science journal published from London, but before it could be published, the article fell into the hands of one John Macpherson. the defense science advisor to the British government. He called Dr. James to his office and told him that he should not have written the article in such clear terms. He said that a wave of panic would go round the world if the article written by Dr. James was published. So the article was withdrawn and it was not published. John Macpherson suggested to Dr. James that they should call a secret conference of experts and think of the steps that could be taken to avoid the catastrophe. Now, before start the story, we should read the story The Comet II.
By the time they finished their deliberations and Sir John dropped him at his hotel off Regent Street, it was 1 a.m. There was hardly any crowd on the street, but when James looked up from his window, a star-studded night sky greeted him. Somewhere amongst these stars was Comet II heading for a collision with the Earth. It was hard to believe the calamity of the future on such a peaceful night. For a moment, James wondered if he had done his sums right. Whatever doubt James may have had about Sir John's efficiency were quickly dispelled when he reported for the conference and found that all the experts listed by him were there. Astronomers, computer scientists, nuclear physicists, space technologists, biologists, all were there. And as Sir John's special invitee was present, the man who had started it all, Manoj Datta. The conference lasted 1 week and went on under total cover of secrecy. First, the experts checked and rechecked James Forsyth's calculation with the latest observations of Comet II from the direct hit predicted by him. There was a small chance that the comet may just graze the atmosphere of the Earth and not collide. In that case, the loss of life and property would not be total. But this slight respite was hardly reassuring enough for taking no action. Having decided that some action was needed, what form should it take? The experts dismissed defensive measures like living in underground bunkers. It was simply not a practical proposition. So the only course was to take offensive action. Comet II could be marginally deflected from its path by giving it a push. The experts calculated that the bulk of destructive nuclear power available on the Earth would be needed to achieve this mammoth task. A gigantic nuclear explosion, suitably placed, suitably directed, and suitably timed, could do the trick. This could be done by placing the nuclear payload in a spaceship, sending it to intercept the approaching comet and detonating it by remote control. Success or failure, secrecy must be preserved. Finally, a timetable was drawn up for the operation, which was code-named Project Light Brigade. The important dates in it were October 10. Dispatch the spacecraft with the payload unless by then the comet is already destroyed by natural causes or has changed its path due to unforeseen reasons. November 15. Rendezvous with the comet and detonation of the payload. December 15. If the experiment failed, this was the day the comet would hit the Earth. If it succeeded, this was the day the comet would pass by at a near but safe distance. The success of the experiment depended on how massive the comet was. Nobody could estimate. Everybody hoped that it was not very massive. Do you think we will succeed? Datta asked Sir John Macpherson for his opinion. During the week, the two had developed considerable affinity for each other. Mr. Datta, I will give you an honest answer. I am not buying any Christmas presents till December 15. Datta toured the British Isles for 2 weeks after the conference, and he had a pleasant time visiting observatories and exchanging views with amateur as well as professional astronomers. On his return, he was greeted by the inevitable vast crowd of friends, social leaders, students, and the usual hangers-on. Loaded with garlands and bombarded by questions from the press, he somehow made his way to the waiting car. The details in this part of the story. Sir John dropped Mr. Forsyth at his hotel at about 1 a.m. The night seemed so peaceful that it was hard to believe the calamity of the future. The day of the meeting arrived. James was surprised when he went to attend the conference. All the experts who were invited were present. Sir John had also invited Dattada. At first, the scientists checked James' calculations and found that they were correct. Comet Datta was sure to collide with the Earth on December 15. Some suggested a defensive action. They suggested that underground bunkers should be constructed for everyone to live in. But this suggestion was not practicable and was not accepted. Then the scientists suggested an offensive action. They intended to give the comet a push to change its course. For this, they planned to send a spaceship with nuclear power. The ship would intercept the comet at the right time, and then it will be exploded by remote control. This project was named the Charge of the Light Brigade. A timetable was drawn for the action. Now, Dattada and Sir John had become good friends. Dattada asked Sir John's opinion about the success of the project. He said he could not say anything with certainty, but he would not buy his Christmas presents before December 15. After a week's stay at England, Dattada came back to Calcutta. Back home, he was greeted by a vast crowd. Loaded with garlands and bombarded by questions from the press, he somehow made his way to the waiting car. Now Arriving home, he found another crowd gathered under a pandal. He glanced questioningly at Indrani Devi. Surely she knew how he hated crowds. Indrani, obviously uneasy, offered the explanation. I have arranged a yagna and called priests to bless you. But why? Just because I left the shores of India? You know it is no longer taboo. And in any case, you know my views on these meaningless rituals. He looked at Shivaji Babu, the younger brother of her husband. Shivaji Babu coughed and explained, we have all been very disturbed since you discovered the comet. Guruji recommended a Shanti Yagna to pacify the evil spirit behind the comet. We are all waiting for you to perform the Yagna. May I know what specific advantage there is in this ceremony? Dattada was outwardly calm. The comet you have discovered will not cause any ill effects on Earth. At this remark, Dattada blew up. Don't you know that this is all superstition? It could be condoned in the olden times when man did not know what comets were. Not so in modern times. Comets are known for what they are. Their movements are forecast precisely by mathematical calculations, and it is clearly established by statistical studies that their visits have no correlations with disasters on the Earth. All this is, of course, futile on my part to explain. You and the likes of you never read even the elementary books on science. Shivaji Babu gently interjected, but our wise forefathers recommended such yagnas. Since his return from London, Dattada was in regular correspondence with Sir John Macpherson. Their friendship had grown out of their appreciation of each other's virtues. Sir John admired Dattada's scientific outlook, while the latter admired the former's discipline and efficiency. Their correspondence never mentioned the Project Light Brigade, although once, in a while, Sir John would hint at its progress in a subtle manner that Dattada would understand. Meanwhile, Comet Datta was following its predicted path. In due course, it developed its tail. It circled round the sun without breaking apart, nor did it evaporate. The scientists on the Project Light Brigade therefore knew that the threat of collision was now very much real. In the middle of October, Dattada got a letter from Sir John. In the midst of descriptions of the meeting of the Royal Astronomical Society, the unseasonably warm weather, the opening matches of the football season, and a recent by-election, Dattada spotted the sentence he was eagerly looking for. The charge of the Light Brigade has begun. Let us hope for the best. So, the spacecraft had been launched on time. But will it achieve the rendezvous in time and at the right place? Will the remote control detonation work? What if the gigantic nuclear pile fails to fire? Dattada could not share his anxieties with anyone around him. He had to participate in and outwardly enjoy the puja ceremonies, the Diwali celebration, and other festivals. His sole daytime relaxation was in the company of Kokha, his 8-year-old grandson, and of course, at night, looking through Dibya. He was regularly monitoring the comet, now clearly visible even to the naked eye. On November 18, a special messenger on a scooter from the British Council brought in an urgent telex message for him. The telex operator in Calcutta had wondered what was so special about it to make it so urgent. But on reading it, Dattada lost all his lethargy and rushed to his favorite Rasgulla shop. The message read, "I am confident now of buying my Christmas presents on December 15. John Macpherson." On December 15, Comet Datta came closest to the Earth, at a distance of 80,000 kilometers. Millions saw it and admired it. Only a handful knew how close they had come to total annihilation. When the comet had gone far away and was seen no more, Dattada felt it safe to make the following comment to his wife. "Now that the comet came and went, are you satisfied that no major disaster took place that can be attributed to it?" "I agree that there has been no major disaster, but there could have been some. Do you know how they were averted?" Indrani Devi said with quiet confidence. Dattada looked at her. Did she know? How could she? He had never mentioned Project Light Brigade to her. He probed cautiously. "I don't understand what you mean." "It is very simple. There were no disasters because of the yagna at our house." "But I never performed the yagna. Don't you remember? I refused to have anything to do with it." "Of course I do. But we found a way out. At least Guruji did. He said that if you were unwilling to perform the yagna, it would be all right if a descendant of yours did it. So we got Kokha to deputize for you. And it has worked. Isn't Guruji clever?" Indrani's voice had a ring of triumph. Dattada formed a mental picture of Kokha performing the yagna, uttering mantras dictated to him, which he did not understand, pouring ghee at specified intervals into the fire, offering flowers. And then the picture changed to an assembly of scientists at the conference, analyzing the problem, devising solutions, and executing them rationally and efficiently. It seemed hard to believe that both pictures were different aspects of contemporary human society. Dattada was aware of the gulf that separates the rich from the poor, the educated from the illiterate, the privileged from the unprivileged. But this gap between the rational and the superstitious seemed to him far wider, far more sinister. Will human society ever succeed in eliminating it? Dattada did not know the answer. Let's understand the details in this part of the story. Back home, Dattada saw a huge crowd outside his house. His wife Indrani Devi had consulted a Guruji who advised performing a yagna to bless Dattada and to pacify the evil spirits behind the comet. But Dattada was displeased. He refused to have anything to do with the yagna. He explained that there was no connection between the appearance of a comet and the misfortunes of the world. Eventually, the day of the calamity dawned. Comet Datta came very close to Earth. Millions of people admired it. Little did they know what a mishap they had been saved from. Dattada had been constantly worrying. Just then he received an urgent telex from Sir John. It said that he was going to buy his Christmas presents on December 15th. Naturally, no one could understand what it meant, but Dattada was extremely happy. He knew that the charge of Project Light Brigade had been successful. The Earth had been saved from complete destruction. After the comet had disappeared, Dattada once again reassured his wife that there is nothing harmful about a comet. But she smiled and said that the comet did not harm because the yagna was performed. Dattada's grandson had performed the yagna on his behalf. Dattada was shocked. He wondered that even in this age, the rationale and the superstitions exist together, though the gap between the two was too wide. So true are these thoughts, don't you think? Now,